Hello again, everyone. It's another Federal Tax Update podcast. This is Roger Harris and joined as always by Annie Schwab. Annie, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's finally fall here in Dallas.
I can't believe that 2025 is almost over.
I know. That's scary.
I mean, it seems I can remember when it just started, but now, again, I don't know when you're listening to it. I know when we're recording it. We're in November, Thanksgiving's around the corner, and then there's the Christmas season and holidays. So, oh well.
And guess what? There's still a government shutdown.
Yeah. And gosh almighty, hopefully they'll end that sometime soon because it's getting a little petty right now that they can't agree on anything. Makes it wonder how the whole thing's going to work going forward. If they open the government back up, can they get anything done since they can't even agree on opening the government? But anyhow, we'll deal with that whenever. Hopefully by the time we do another podcast, the government will be open. And again, we're going to be talking later on with some ex people from the IRS that will announce later that we'll be talking about how's this impacting the filing season for us next year. What's the IRS going to be able to do and not do, and whether we'll be able to. I don't think it's going to be a normal tax season. The question is, how far from normal will it be? But okay, let's get back to today because we're excited about what is happening today. Again, we just mentioned we're filming this in early November, and we're in the P10 renewal season, which is not a big deal. I mean, I'll just go there, pay a little fee, and get it. But we all check a box that indicates that we have a WISP and we have all this great security and all these things in place. And I hope that we're all checking that box because it's true, not just because we have to check the box. But we're going to revisit. If you've been a longtime listener to this podcast, you heard us early on have a podcast with Kathleen Madeley, who was a practitioner who had a breach, and she shared her story. Then, not too long ago, we had Glenn Gizzy, who works for IRS Stakeholder Liaison, talk about the same type of issue, but from their perspective and other things that they do. But we spent a lot of time talking about how the IRS responds in the case of a practitioner's breach. And today we're going to bring another story to you. This one is part of our family, John Barucci, who was a franchisee of ours right outside of Boston, and you'll introduce him in a minute, who had another experience. And I've known John for a lot of years, and I know John does things the right way. So this isn't because he was negligent or he didn't do something right. It's a story that we want to reinforce the importance of doing everything the right way and reacting quickly because, again, John did everything the right way, and it still can happen to anybody. So we're happy to have John join us today. So Annie, why don't you introduce John and let's kick it off and let him tell his story.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head saying, it can happen to anyone. That is exactly what people think that won't happen to them until it happens to them. But thank you so much, John, for joining us today. Again, John Barucci, a Paget franchisee, been with us for many years. And I'm happy to have you. I'm sorry to hear your experience, but I think it's a story that others can learn from and hopefully take something away from this podcast today that will protect them and their clients moving forward. So, John, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Annie, and Roger. Thank you as well. And unfortunately, I'm sad to unfortunately have to be here for this
Yeah,
podcast.
for this reason. Yeah, we wish it was for something else. But
For sure, but it's important, and it's been a journey, and it isn't entirely complete. But I appreciate the opportunity to tell the story about what happened to me, and for sure, I didn't think obviously this would have happened to me, but I just kind of want to go through it, and I guess bear with me as I tell the story. I'm going to try to be as succinct as I can. And kind of as an overview, I wanted to kind of just let everyone know kind of what I had in place in advance of this, and then the chronology of events, and then I'm
Right.
more than happy to, as you wish to ask questions, please do so.
Yeah.
Sounds
Go ahead
good.
and tell them what you did to get ready, and then I want everybody to pay particular attention to what you did afterwards, because he did everything right, followed all the rules when this happened, and so the results were a lot better
Right.
than they could have been.
Yeah, so I mean, in place, pre-event, I had my general liability insurance, I had my cyber insurance, and I had the security investments that I had made prior to the event, included firewalls, and I had this RMM, which is that remote monitoring and managing of the endpoints, which I didn't really know what all meant, but I knew
Right.
I had, I knew I had
Sounded good.
thing. Yeah, it sounded all good. And I was a client of Defendify, which I frankly don't even know if we still have a relationship with them, but they have training and they had awareness courses that my employees and myself were involved in, and part of that was developing a written plan for the unlikely event this would happen. So my chronology of events, the initiating event, and this all kind of in the backstory here is that I had a forensic team that did some investigation that kind of put together some of the things that happened. But in the moment, what actually happened was that I had an event that occurred whereby I clicked on a link to what I thought was the Social Security Administration, indicating to me that they were sending me some information on an account that I had earlier in the week. I had reached out to them about a record of account on Social Security history, and I thought that's what this was. So I clicked on the attachment, which of course was a malicious attempt to get in.
At
Right.
the
And
time,
so,
you didn't know right then.
no, I didn't. I didn't know right then. This was
Okay.
back in August. The date was August 12th.
Okay.
And then, so that was the event that kind of precipitated everything that happened. The breach actually occurred on Wednesday, September 10th.
Okay.
And so
Just
from
before the deadline, right?
Yeah,
Your need.
exactly. And so at that point, Wednesday, September 10th, early in the morning, through that link, they were able to remotely access my desktop, and it was through a piece of software which was a remote access software. So the software itself wasn't malicious. It wasn't some piece of malicious software. It was a remote. It was what downloaded to my desktop, unbeknownst to me, was something like Go to My PC,
Mhm.
and it allowed them to get into my desktop. And from that point, um, at 3:31 in the morning, if you can bear with the chronology, I got a two-factor authentication on my phone, indicating that there was an attempt to access the tax software. It happened again 2 minutes later at 3:33. So as we go through this on September 10th, there was a second attempt to get there. And then again at 3:33, as it turns out, um, the through the Thomson Reuters software, you're able to then, if you can't get through on that initial phone authentication, you can then go to an email as a backup.
Mhm.
And so that at that point they were able to get the code through my Outlook, and find the code to get then into the
To get
software.
software. Now I gotta ask you a question. Were you awake at this time, or did it wake you up when this was going?
I rarely sleep, and
Okay.
my phone is always alerting, so I
Right.
heard it. But it didn't dawn on me at that point that
Mhm.
this was a problem. So 3:33, I didn't hear the email backup alert. The first two come to my phone, so I got
Mhm.
that. And at that point, 5 minutes later, the bad actor had already accessed the first client. So client one had been accessed, and through the forensics, we found out at this point between 3:38 and 3:44 in the morning, the first client had been accessed, banking information had been changed, income had been adjusted, and they then at that point went to send it to transmission. And if yeah, as we all well know, when you send a file to transmission to Thomson Reuters, there's another alert that comes on,
Right.
and that was at
Right.
3:44 in the morning. So that then also came to my phone. At that point, I was awake, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you were.
Now you
I
were
was
definitely
I was
awake.
I was on my way to the office because this didn't make sense. Still not overly concerned, but they had made the alert to my phone, and then they went to the backup email at 3:44, same moment, and then they transmitted the first file to Thomson Reuters, same moment. So 3:44 a.m. the first file went. Um, Between 3:47 and 3:48 a.m., second client was accessed. There was no data altered. They closed the file.
Mm.
3:48 to 3:52 in the morning, the third client was accessed. There was no transmission to the IRS, but they made some changes to the client file, as I found out later.
So
So
they
that
were
was
basically changing it to create larger refunds? Is that what I remember?
right. So income was being reduced on Schedule C. Charitable contributions in this particular case, this third client, were being increased. Um, in some of these client cases, there were a total of 9 clients accessed. There were other things, as I'll get into, that were being done that were sort of clever on their part, but income was being adjusted. Uh, Either down, and deductions were being adjusted, as well as, interestingly, there were some refunds that were being applied to next year.
Mm.
Which seemed
And
really odd.
yeah, for the client, but because they increased the refunds so much, it was, you've heard the saying, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah.
And so they were adjusting things so that it might not quite seem so alarming that
Or it might do you know if the clients were gonna get the same amount applied that was on their return, so maybe they wouldn't even
close.
notice?
Not
Close,
exactly the same amount, but
but
close
close,
enough
but
that it might
Yeah.
not
yeah.
necessarily have alerted.
Yeah. 2
Um,
other quick comments, John, but sorry. One of the reasons I asked about were you awake is this shows how smart they are. They figured who in the world is awake at 3:30 in the morning when they're doing all this.
right,
So,
right.
they're smart enough to know when to do it, and secondly, because 'cause I've heard this so many times when I've been around people, "I don't have to worry about it. I got multi-factor authentication."
Right.
Well, you need mul now, don't take this wrong, you want multi-factor authentication, but that by itself didn't stop them.
Well,
No.
and they had to have known the software because it's like minutes. They're in it, they're changing it, then the next client, the next client, the next client. So it's somebody who is familiar with, the e-filing process, familiar with, the software, the data entry screens, how to get past any kind of like e-file diagnostic because it wouldn't have gone if they had, hadn't cleared all the diagnostics. So, somebody, whoever this was, definitely knew their way around in the software, and they moved very quickly.
And I'm sure they know every software. I don't
Probably,
you
yeah.
know, somebody out there knows them all.
Yeah,
Let me add to that that the initial the access point, the software was downloaded August 12th onto my computer, and all this action happened September 10th. This is particularly just speculation, but you're right. The actor that came in on September 10th likely wasn't the actor that was the one that got the initial, that was fishing for this information, right? So
mhm.
this
Yeah.
was sold to somebody
Yeah.
who knew the software. I mean, this very likely was put out there some, probably on the dark web or something, and
Right.
somebody got it who knew exactly
Yeah, I
what.
was gonna say that because 'cause I've been briefed that there is actually a dark web of where you can go and buy clients that have been well, access to, hacked, however you wanna describe it.
Yeah,
And so it's usually the person who creates the entry point is not the person doing there's 2 different
there's
groups. The person that gets access to the information who then sells it to the person who uses the information. So, yeah, probably during that period from when they hacked in till the 10th, it was out there on the market and somebody bought it and knew what software you used, and
Yep. Yeah, it's a funnel for sure.
yeah, yeah,
And so, just kind of going through this in real time, at 3:48, the next client was accessed, more adjustments were made. 3:53, the next client was accessed, banking, all banking information was changed. So the third client that was accessed, they didn't make a transmission. The fourth client that was accessed, both IRS and Massachusetts returns were transmitted after banking was changed. Fifth client, same thing. Banking info changed, and the U.S. return was transmitted. And I think about this as this was September 10th. So, if this had happened early in the tax filing season, I might have had 30 right now. As it stood on September 10th, I might have had 35, 40 clients that hadn't been filed. The
right,
clients that had been filed, all the rest of them,
right,
were already locked down. But I mean, these were the ones that were pending, if you will.
right,
Yeah.
So the sixth client at 4:06 a.m. was accessed. At 4:07, the seventh client was accessed and transmitted to Thomson Reuters. And then at 4:14, the eighth client was transmitted. I'm sorry, the eighth client was accessed, but was not transmitted. And then the final client, the ninth client accessed, was the one at 4:15 to 4:16 in the morning when I walked in. And still not worried about what was going. I
right,
didn't know any of this at the moment. I just walk in and see my desktop being manipulated. And in that moment, if for a split second, I was really grateful that Thomson Reuters was in my software fixing a
yeah,
problem.
fixing something, yeah, yeah.
It's funny how your mind works, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
God, I'm like, they work all hours. That lasted for about exactly a second until I grabbed the mouse and shut it down at 4:16. Nothing got done there, but that client had income adjusted, banking info changed, and didn't realize that in the moment. I closed the client out. So
yeah.
that was the population of the breach event.
And I think you said something that you're telling this based on information you've gotten subsequent to this when you're forensic. When you walk in there, you didn't know in real time what you just said, that these 9 clients had been done and what had been done. You walked in and saw somebody playing in your computer and figured it was Thomson Reuters, but this all came because of the forensic
Yep.
study that was
Investigation.
done afterwards. So, yeah, don't think you're gonna walk in and know, "Oh, it's only 9 clients or it's 900 or whatever it
No,
is." You're not
No,
gonna know
I'm
that in real
sure.
time.
Yeah, I'm sure your brain was just like, What
I
just
was
happened?"
shaking.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet. I
yeah.
bet.
I was
Mm.
Is it
shaking. I didn't know, and I didn't know, but I didn't know at the moment, and then immediately I began to think about what just happened, right?
right,
And so I have a timeline of things that happened shortly thereafter. If you care to hear about them,
Sure. No, we wanna know.
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Once you knew, you didn't know the magnitude of what had happened, but you knew something had happened.
Who'd
something
you
had
call
happened.
first?
Yeah,
Who'd you
yeah,
call
Well,
first?
let's start with the actual timeline of events, because I do have it, and I have it through emails I wrote and saved, and everything that happened subsequent to me literally logging off the computer. A
yeah,
minute later, I changed the password. So I mean, I've got an email from Thomson Reuters. At 4:17 in the morning, where I changed the password to the software because I didn't really know what was going on,
right,
and I got that confirmation. At 4:35 in the morning is kind of when the shoe dropped, because I got an email at 4:35, the autoresponder email that we all get, that acknowledges the receipt from the IRS that a return was filed, and it was client number 7, the seventh client that had been transmitted. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't something it was bigger than me,
right.
something really did happen, something really was going on. And that was at 4:35 in the morning, that acknowledgement coming through really let me know there was something
The IRS
dreadfully
accepted a
wrong.
tax return you did not file,
Eh,
and it was out of your control now. You can't stop it. Once it gets transmitted, you can't get it back.
Right.
And so,
That's
okay.
right. And so from 4:36 in the morning till 11 in the morning, I went through, I immediately started to go through the Greenie. I tried to figure out in the software what has happened here. Like, one return file, I was trying to think, did I transmit this return? Like, was
Right.
this, like, I wasn't still
You still don't
sure.
know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and I really thought maybe I did, but of course I didn't. And so I started to go through who has been transmitted. So it was an assessment period on my own of trying to figure this out. But I knew by the late 8 o'clock hour that morning that I knew I had to initiate my protocol for speaking to the IRS. So I reached out immediately to the IRS liaison to let them know that I did feel like I had a breach. Um, and that I knew there were several returns that I believed were going to be received by the IRS. I knew how many uh, had been transmitted because of looking at the e-files, that how
Okay.
many had gone out. So I wanted to immediately get word out to the liaison.
Do they
I
like answer the phone like, "Hello, how are you doing today?"
No, no, unfortunately not. It was via email. I
Okay,
went
gotcha.
through the email process. I reached out to my area rep. The area I had gone onto the IRS. And I had emailed
Pambo,
the.
right.
So I did that, and then I believe Annie later on you had suggested just reach out to all of them because somebody will hopefully get back to you. Of course I'd
Right.
called and left messages and so forth, but I reached out to my regional liaison, and then
Office,
I reached
yeah.
out to all of them later on. And then at 9 a.m., as soon as Thomson Reuters wakes up at 9 a.m. uh, when they open, I called them to just let them know about the damage that I knew about. That there were five clients that had been submitted, and if there was anything they could do on their end to stop the transmission to the IRS, whether I know that they say they can't.
Mhm.
Right.
But I figured,
Can't
asking.
hurt to ask. Right.
So that's what I did. 9 a.m. I was on the phone. I'm like, I've been breached. There have been unauthorized returns filed. If there's anything you can do, please do it. And I was on the phone with them for a period of time.
So again, for people listening, don't think your software company can bail you out, because I'm sure there's a point at which that return is out of their control. It's on the way to the IRS. Let me ask you
Right.
a question about the IRS. This was obviously before, we're in a shutdown now. This was before the government shut down, but it was after some of the cutbacks. Is that correct, when all this happened?
Yeah, this was September 10th. So
So there had been cutbacks at the IRS, but the government wasn't shut down yet. So we're
correct.
dealing with a somewhat restricted IRS workforce, but at least everybody that had a job was still there versus where we are today.
Today, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would think, and you know way more about this, Roger, than I do in terms of like how the IRS, what their composition is, and where the core parts of the IRS that are just kind of nuclear. They don't touch. These are the parts that must work. I would
Yeah.
think that the divisions within the IRS that involve security and involve the practitioner groups in that sense, that those are the parts they have to try to maintain integrity around.
Yeah. And
The client facing stuff.
yeah. Yeah. Today, with the shutdown, there are what they call critical parts
Right.
that are still working and have continued to work. The problem, it was actually probably worse when you were having this problem, because then it was up to the employee. They were taking these, early retirement options, and I know the stakeholder liaison department had a huge loss of people through, because if you remember when we were having all these layoffs, one of the complaints was that they weren't really thought through. They were just across the board, get rid of 25% of the people, no matter what their job is. They've subsequently tried to bring some of them back, but I do know the liaison people commented that they suffered more losses than they would have, in a normal, let's cut everybody's workforce down by 10% or whatever the number was. They suffered a lot more than they would have. That's why I'm trying to get a sense as we hear their response, putting it in the context of how were they impacted by the cutbacks, but this was before the shutdown. Because you're right, in the shutdown, I would imagine this department has everybody still on board that they have.
Sure.
Because, but you're right.
But how experienced and trained they are, you don't know. They could have pulled
Yeah.
somebody from somewhere else just to,
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right, John, back to you.
Yeah, sure. So so later that morning, I had obviously taken the computer offline and brought it to the tech firm that I have that does all this RMM stuff, and they did what they had to do to remove the software that obviously was on there that allowed the access. Later that early afternoon, I'd contacted my insurance company and other to kind of obviously inform, and that was that day, more or less, in a nutshell. The next day, I started the painful process of speaking to the clients I knew had been accessed through email and calls, as to what I knew in that moment had happened. The IRS liaison folks did in fact reach out to me within 24 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
So
Great.
that was really that was very heartwarming to get that outreach. And I'll also say, uh, Cindy was fantastic at Paget. I had spoke to her. I believe I also spoke to you, Annie,
You did.
right out of the gate. And it's just it was kind of just surreal trying to get my
Figure out
arms
what to
around
do.
this.
Yeah. How'd the clients take it?
That's my question.
Yeah. So obviously they were concerned. They were
Sure.
they but there wasn't anything directly at me. It was, obviously they were concerned about their tax IDs and banking information and
Right.
such, and and how much information I could give them. I was just brutally transparent about what I didn't
I
know.
think that's the
Uh,
right decision at that point. Like, there's
yeah, right.
sugarcoating. It's not going to help anybody.
No.
No, just letting them know, hey, this is
Yeah.
what I know. This is all I know, and this is what I know, and I'll let you know more when I know it. But the liaison folks provided me with information about what I should do. They told me that another division in the IRS called the Return Integrity and
Integrity.
Compliance Services Group, the RICS group,
Ricks. Yep.
Uh-huh.
would also be in touch with me in the near future. And they also indicated the most immediate step was to get a new EFIN.
Of course.
Mhm.
And so that process it was a quick process as well. Calling the e-help desk, I was in and out of that call in an hour. Having my old EFIN that I've had for 30 years uh,
Mhm.
suspended
Suspended. Yeah.
and a new one reissued instantly that I could then put into the tax software and continue
Now,
on
I
from.
don't know if the EFIN is open during the shutdown. That may not have. I mean, a 1 hour turnaround time is amazing. I don't know if that would happen now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I don't
Yeah.
know either.
Yeah.
I do know that I didn't hang up the phone. I mean, it literally on the phone and off the phone with a new eFin. I had gone into my whatever account it's called with the Tax Pros. I was able to see the application. I fired it off to Thomson Reuters. The next day they approved it, but even before then, I had put it in my tax software and was already off filing
So you are
returns
almost up and able to file again within
one
2
day.
days? 1 day.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I already transmitted to them. They just had to approve
Update it. Yeah.
the application. I got the IRS letter a week later, but they took applied for application or the acknowledgement within my Tax Pros account as kind of gospel for them,
Right.
allowing for me to continue on. So
Have you
that
slept
was
yet? I'm just curious. Did you go back to sleep yet?
no. Well, yeah. It's like just barely, but yes, boy,
Jeez.
it was tough. But I knew it was game day. I mean, you're
Right.
gonna be up. I mean, when this is going on, I mean, it's important, and that's a really great point. The weight of what we all handle as tax practitioners, as as franchisees for this personally identifiable information for our clients' data. It's really it's a weighty responsibility, and that is something that, when we go through the motions every year, and it's the same thing. It's important to understand, and we take for granted that our clients really, they trust us to give them good information, but we hold the keys to the kingdom for many people.
Oh, yeah. And you said one thing that, I'm gonna add one comment. One thing I heard is because you had a plan and you executed it, you were back and running in 24 hours. I mean, you were able to keep your business going 24 hours after the breach because you had a plan, you knew what to do, you knew who to contact, you did all those sorts of things. And in that 24 hours, you'd reach out to clients. Again, I can't tell you how often when I sit in sessions with tax preparers, the stories you hear, well, I didn't want to call my clients. I was afraid to call them. And, so it just made the problem worse because now those clients, they're not aware of the problem. Who knows what else is happening because of the data that you just mentioned that we have. But you did everything right. The problem wasn't solved. You still had issues that we'll hear about, but you were up and running within 24 hours because you knew what to do. You knew who to call. You had a plan. And because it could have been a whole lot worse because you had a corporate deadline a few days out and then October 15th. And just
Right.
imagine if you'd have been delayed weeks.
Exactly, and exactly. So the very next day after, so that was day one post breach. That's what happened. Day two, I contacted my local Westwood Police Department, filed an incident report. I was in there early in the morning, and made that report. I have a copy of that report. And then that was Friday. So that happened to be Friday, September 12th. And then nothing happens until Monday. Um, Thomson Reuters then reaches out to me. They have an operations and technology group. So all this while I'm thinking, these returns have all been transmitted, but they told me, because I was able to reach out to them so quickly, that they were in fact able to stop. Um, so it was 4 clients and 5 tax returns.
Oh,
Uh,
one state.
one state,
Yeah.
4 clients, 5 tax returns. Of those, so they informed me that they were able to stop 4 of the 5 returns from being submitted to the IRS. Three IRS and one Massachusetts Department of Revenue return were able to be stopped. So that one
Wow,
acknowledgement that came
good.
through at 4:35 in the morning was
Is
the
the
only
only
one
one
that
that
got through.
really got through.
That got through. Yeah.
That's
So that
crazy.
turned out
And
to be a really bad deal, whoever bought your clients, because they only got one return for whatever
yeah.
whatever they paid for your client list or your access. They
Yeah.
only got one return
And
through.
and
So
the one that they did send, what was the refund? Like, was it
It was, honestly,
thousands or what?
no, it was under $2,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
well, they took a beating on that. Whatever they paid, they took a beating on that because I know they paid more than 2 grand
Yeah,
for
for
access.
sure.
So, but I don't feel the least bit sorry for them. I hope
No.
they lost $1 million on that deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. That same day, and in that call, they gave me, Thomson Reuters gave me, really, the information that I needed in order to really uh, put together what I've already given to you, which is that timeline. They
Right.
gave me the logs. So I
Nice.
got the log of access, and that log of access was confirmed by the forensic team that I hired to do the investigation. But that log of access I got on Monday, September 15th, that kind of validated what I more or less already knew.
Quick
Um,
question. How did you find this forensics team? Was this something you had selected?
Insurance. So when I contacted my cyber policy, they already had a legal team sorted, and they had a forensics investigation team sorted, and the legal team has, we're executing it as of yesterday. The company that is going to do the offering to the clients and the dependents and such, that were breached or that were exposed,
Okay.
the
Okay.
um the whole business of offering monitoring services and that sort of thing. So there's some compliance around that's going to be something that I'm going to have to deal with.
So
But
that's
that
another important thing when you're selecting your insurance company, understanding exactly what coverage you have, what they can do in case of a breach like this. Because
absolutely.
yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
that was something that you all, this isn't this year. This was several years back. What about that cybersecurity policy? General liability insurance doesn't necessarily cover
no,
cyber rider.
right.
And my cyber, and I did have a cyber rider, which was great. I mean, for this unfortunate circumstance. So, and the cyber rider I happen to use the Hartford. So the Hartford is the company that underwrites below the general liability, and there are parts to that cyber rider that include forensic investigation, legal, and then other offerings that involve like continuing monitoring and so forth. I mean, in the last 2 months, I've gotten letters just personally that my credit card company got breached, and so those letters, they offer the credit monitoring, and so
Right.
that's
Right.
we have to do that too. But that costs money, and you need that cyber rider.
Well,
Uh,
you've made a couple of important points because again, all of us hate to spend money. We'd rather find, but it was important that you had a quality software provider that had the resources that you needed that could step in as opposed to necessarily the cheapest software. It's one thing to just be able to calculate a tax return, but these other things can become extremely valuable if you need them. You had great cyber insurance. They played a critical role. You knew who to call. I mean, these are all things that are easy to just kind of blow off and say, that's too expensive or that's not important until you're
they need
sitting
it.
in John's chair. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So the Ricks unit reached out to me on the fifth day after the breach, and they wanted so the way the Ricks unit works is once a breach has been identified, been reported, and there's that self-reporting that I did. Uh, they then offer you an opt into a practitioner relief program, which I didn't really know the first thing about. But I'll explain what that is very quickly. But in order to get involved in that, you have to provide them your entire individual client list for the year.
Mhm.
Right. So that practitioner relief program involves essentially reporting to them with 24 hours before you transmit returns to them, who you're going to transmit and the metrics of that return. So social security numbers, AGI, refund, banking information. They give you a spreadsheet that you have to send to them by 3 p.m. the day before that you transmit, and so there's a little bit of a process that goes on. But the idea behind that is the reason you would do this is so that you don't just transmit to them. And then they would be sending, once they get the list of everyone in your database, then they're flagging them all. And so then those folks would be
It's just
getting, yeah, no, no,
another layer of making sure that nothing gets through.
nothing gets through. And if they
Yeah.
already have in advance who you're filing, then they're not going to be sending that identity verification letter that holds up the processing of the return, never mind the
Right.
refund.
Oh,
Right.
got it.
Because
Okay.
that's the issue there is they're not even going to process the return. They'll get the return, but they won't process it until
They won't.
identity is verified.
Right. And people who want their refunds, that's going to slow it down significantly.
Right. So
Yeah.
so there's this opt-in program that I learned about through this process. A couple days later, I in fact did get my legal counsel, my forensics team, and then they did their investigation. I waited a week to send the IRS the client list because, frankly, I was concerned, and I wanted to wait to talk to my legal team about my options. I wanted to make sure that this was the right move to make, and I needed to get my legal sorted out before I just released everything. So I needed to make sure that this was 100% what I should do. And it's important. I mean, when you have legal representation, you want to act based on their go ahead. And so since I had already secured that, I made sure that I was operating under their umbrella for my own protection, as well as clients and everything else. So I waited till Monday, the 12th day after the breach, After Rick's contacted me 7 days after the breach, I waited until the 12th day to actually send them that info and then move forward with it. So that was my timeline and process there.
But that turned out to be the right thing to do.
It was.
Just, yeah, because again, I keep saying this, but I've heard very many instances where a lot of practitioners in your situation reached out to them when they heard that they had to furnish the list. They just said no and went away
Yeah.
because they had some of the same fears, I guess, that you did or they
Mhm.
did. But that's really a good thing. So if you're listening to this and you're in this position, John's telling you it's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, and not knowing, you know, I'm flying blind in
Well,
that
sure.
sense. But I just wanted to make sure, but it absolutely, I mean, that is the right thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so that was the 12th day after the breach, and then fast forward because there really wasn't any action since then until the 37th day, and that brings us to October 17th when my forensic team did in fact have a meeting and produce their findings, which essentially resulted in more or less what I knew, you know, a couple of days after the breach when I got the logs from the software. Obviously, there was the bad actors had access to my email, but the tax software issued the part that was the population.
Yeah.
And yesterday, the 4th of November, I think today's the 5th or the 6th, a couple days ago, Tuesday, my legal team, they had reached out to me and they basically wanted, after the meeting I had with forensics, they wanted a full list of all social security numbers that were
Oh,
breached. They wanted to know because it wasn't just, of course, the client files, it was the spouses, the dependents,
Sure. Yeah.
and so I provided my legal team with that information so that they can then furnish the necessary reports to the regulators that exist in Massachusetts. I have clients that were in California, in New Hampshire, and so the jurisdictional issues involved with what legal requirements exist in those jurisdictions with respect to reporting are different, and so that's why I have attorneys on the case here. They're doing what needs to be done in wherever they are. So I guess in summary, yeah, for in terms of what this was, the bad actors got into my tax software for 38 minutes. They accessed 9 clients. It involved 27 individuals, taxpayer spouses, and dependents. There were 5 files transmitted to Thomson Reuters. 4 were rejected. 1 was successfully transmitted to the IRS. And in terms of the look back on this, the kind of retrospective review up to this point, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's definitely an adage, but it's for sure. You know, utilize some of the resources that are out there. I think informing your employees, doing course awareness around what's happening out there in the space of security. They really have some courses, and they constantly push stuff out, and there are simple and easy things that to do on a monthly or quarterly basis, involving phishing, involving all these things that
Oh, everything.
we
Yeah.
don't know, you know, but it again, it's an investment. It costs money to do these things. You know, but it's money. I think it's money well spent based on you know, certainly my experience
I will say they're smarter than we are, and they're
there.
coming up with
Oh, that,
new scams faster than we can even understand the old ones. So you're right. Having a company like Defendify or something similar to that, where you're getting the latest kind of tricks and tips and all the things to not just keep you, but you're right, your employees um, aware. Because I mean, it just takes, like you said, one
oh yeah,
click, and now
they're in.
they're
And
in.
and if you think about your journey, John, you know, it was only small because you happened to be awake, number one. If
Yeah.
you had been sleeping longer, it would have been larger. it's only small because you took the actions. You had I mean, a lot of the things that you were being done because your insurance company jumped in and because IRS jumped in. And I mean, this could have been, I know your firm. We're not going to tell everybody what it's like here, but your firm is so much larger than the damage, but it could have been the entire firm
Yeah.
if things had gone differently.
Sure.
And so first of all, you're to be credited for having taken it seriously, not just thought, the way I started this thing, I got to check a box to get a P10. That's all I care about. You knew it was more than that. And you had all the pieces in place to protect you when this happens. It's like every kind of insurance we buy. We don't buy car insurance because we want to run into other cars. We
Right.
don't buy life insurance because we want to die. We buy it because when we need it, it's there and it will get us through whatever the event is.
I do have a question for you. Ballpark, how much out of pocket did you have to spend? Not for the insurance policies and stuff, but you know, what would you estimate all this post-event cost you?
In terms of just over and above what the policy covers.
Right. Yeah.
So it's at the end of the day, it's going to be my deductible, which is $1,000.
That's
That's it.
amazing.
Yeah.
And you didn't lose any clients.
No.
And what about the fraudulent refund? Who covers that? How does the
So,
client get made whole?
right. So the IRS, when so what happened there with that one client that did in fact have a return accepted, um, we the process there was to submit the return on paper with
Okay.
an affidavit that indicated that the return that was in process was fraudulently prepared or filed, and that this is going to replace that return. So the client, although it will likely take,
Take a lot
yeah,
longer.
it'll take longer, maybe a few months, and with the government shutdown, God only knows. But in order to get that couple of $1,000 refund. It might not. I don't even think it's a couple of $1,000s. It's even less than that. That they're going to get that refund. That the IRS will honor that refund based on the conversation that I
Yeah.
had, because that return was fraudulently submitted, and they're
Gotcha.
attesting to that fact. So the client, and honestly, if I have to cover the refund as an advance, they've
Right.
been a client a long time. I don't even. I mean, that doesn't even. I mean,
And how
that's.
long does the monitoring go for all the monitoring is
I believe it's a year. I believe it's a year-long monitoring process. I believe that the cost to cover is for 12 months.
and what about IP pins? Did all these clients need to get were they issued IP pins? I mean,
N
we actually encourage
Right.
better safe than sorry. There's no red flag. There's no downside of getting an IP pin,
No,
and
there
they're
isn't.
free.
Anybody can get them. I've always encouraged IP pins, and it's only something that's required of somebody that actually had a fraudulent return submitted. So
Correct.
this
Just
one
the
client.
one.
One. Yeah, and but everybody else, that was access that I spoke to, that I knew about, I told them, "Go get an IP pin. It's just for your protection."
Sure. It's a good idea, but they don't have to do it.
No,
So
they don't have
so
to.
really going forward, other than keeping your insurance and doing all that, it's not gonna impact you going forward as you file returns, except for actually one client has to have an IP PIN.
Right, and we have many clients that have them,
Oh,
but
sure.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So again, now that it's available everywhere, I don't know why you don't have one
Yeah,
because
it's free too.
it's free. I mean,
It's
there's no
not really
cost.
it doesn't take a long time to get, you know. It's not
no.
time
No.
consuming. Um,
So, John,
wow.
what is your kind of final message to, I mean, again, our audience is going to be people like you that prepare tax returns that hopefully uh, have everything covered. But for those that have listened to your story, what's the biggest thing you want them to take away from this in terms of what they
It can
should
happen to
do?
anybody.
Yeah,
This can happen to any of
right.
us, and we need to just stay vigilant. I mean, I like to think that I'm very careful, But
Oh,
I
you
mean,
are.
I
Yeah, I
wasn't.
know.
You know, I mean, I mean, they all it just takes one mistake,
Mhm.
one time for something to go wrong. You know, you click on one thing, and you can have the monitoring software, and you can have the firewalls, and you can have the security and all of the other things. And it's just staying vigilant about, continuing to just be. It's a very difficult. We live in a time as you say, there are people smarter than us. The scams are more sophisticated. I'm talking to people that you can get on, if you're typing stuff into Google and you're getting search results, those top sponsored search results could be from a bad actor. You just
Mhm.
need to be using pay for things to do your tax research. Don't do tax research on Google. It's something as simple
Yeah.
as, and I'm guilty of it too. I mean, you go on, you're just looking for a quick answer and you just want to type into the browser, something. Don't save your passwords on a browser. Use NordPass. Use
Yeah.
some kind of, some
Password
simple
manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
password manager. Keep things, make sure you log off. Although sometimes it's easy to, it's just staying vigilant, doing the things that you're supposed to do, because this can happen to anybody.
Yeah. And I've known John for a long time, and he is vigilant. He does everything, but none of us are perfect. And
Right.
that's what the bad actors know, that all of us, no matter how diligent we are, no matter how much we try to do everything right, sometimes we get busy, we open something we shouldn't open, we do something wrong. So that's why we need this system in place. We need the WISP, we need the insurance, we need all this stuff there, because they're spending every hour of their day trying to figure out how to catch the one time you let your guard down.
Mhm.
And during busy season, gosh, think about all the mistakes sometimes I can't remember how to get home. I mean, much less how to log off my computer or do things. I mean, it's, we're gonna make a mistake, and we need to be covered when we do.
Yeah.
And if it can happen to John, I can promise you can happen to anybody, because this is the last guy I would say, well, yeah, I expected this. It's not John. I can tell you that. John Barucci did everything.
Yeah.
And you can tell by his story, he covered for the one time he made a mistake, as he called it.
And I will say, if you don't know WISP, it stands for Written Information Security Plan. You can go on the IRS website and type it in, and there's all kinds of guidelines and helpful resources there. I will say you should review that WISP. We encourage our offices not just to do it, but actually do it and do it well and revisit it and update it. Because if you need it, you want it to be ready to go, just like John said. He knew exactly what to do because he had that, and he had it prepared, he had it ready. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I have it, or I have one from several years ago, or I got a template off the internet and I really barely read it and then I put it in my desk drawer, might be the time to pull it out and make sure it's accurate, update it, um, consider some of the things that John said today, and give it some thought. Talk to your whole team about it, your office,
Yeah.
your employees, your everybody needs to know about it. So
Especially if
Yeah.
you network together, and that's the other
Yeah.
thing. When you're working with a team, you have a team, and I'm sure everyone that has a team knows this, but it's worth mentioning again. When you have a networked group of computers, it just takes one employee to be, browsing the internet, and they download something on their software, and that was one of the first things the forensic team said is, how many computers do you have networked together? Because it could be on anybody's, it could be anybody else, and then they can get in, they can go wherever they need to go. So
yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
good
Because it
point.
doesn't matter if you're perfect if you have an employee or employees who aren't, because they don't have to hack the owner. They just have to hack the system.
Hmm.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, thank you. Thank
Anytime.
you for sharing your story. I'm sorry it happened, but you did everything right,
Well, I'm
and it
glad to
still
share it.
happened. Yeah,
And
no,
honestly, I mean, this could have been a lot worse, as you said. And I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk about it. I'll be at the tech seminar, and I'm more than happy to spend time discussing this with anyone would like to.
yeah,
Well,
no,
thank you
thank you.
so much. And hopefully we'll be coming back soon with a podcast with some more uplifting news, like,
Right. Like the
some
government's open and the IRS is
yeah,
working.
there you go. And
Yes.
everyone's still employed and
Yeah,
all the things. So,
airplanes are still flying or whatever
yeah,
we're gonna see.
good. Well,
All
thank
right,
you
Annie,
again.
take us home. Thanks, John.
This is it. I
Anytime.
think this was great story. Again, like we said, we'll continue to bring you podcasts. Hopefully, some more uplifting news to come. Definitely some tax season kickoff, year-end planning type things. So, as always, I enjoy being here with you, Roger, and that's all I have for today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank
We'll be
you.
back soon. Bye, everybody.